Welcome to We Chat Divorce, hosted by Karen Shalhoub, Legal Liaison, and Katherine Shanahan, CDFA. Each episode, we sit down with divorce professionals and industry experts to provide insights and frank discussions about real people, real situations, and real divorce to help you achieve your best life post-divorce. This episode of We Chat Divorce is brought to you by My Divorce Solution, offering divorce financial planning so clients can secure the divorce settlement they deserve. Visit mydivorcesolution.com to request access.
Welcome to We Chat Divorce. Catherine and I welcome Tracy Malone. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, ladies. It's so good to
Hello.
see you.
As always, it's great to have you back on with us. Thank you.
Oh, you're
Absolutely.
welcome. I was actually on early. I was like, oh, I'm so excited to see the girls.
And I was like, oh, I have nothing to prepare. I love Tracy. I know exactly what we're going to talk about, something great, I know.
So that's for sure. Tracy's no stranger to our podcast, and we always love our conversations with you. But today we have an exciting topic, mostly because it has to do with Tracy's new program she has out that she'll talk with us a little bit about later. But we're going to talk about financial issues to address in parenting plans. Parenting plans are more than where the child or children spend most of their time. Parenting plans also include how we're splitting expenses and other financial arrangements not covered by child support. But first, let's make sure you know all about Tracy. Tracy is a dynamic author, speaker, educator, and internationally recognized narcissistic abuse and divorce coach. As a survivor, that's a very special word for Tracy, of abuse, she has become a leading advocate for empowerment and healing. Tracy founded narcissisticabusesupport.com, a global resource that supports millions of survivors worldwide. She also hosts a podcast and runs a successful YouTube channel. In 2024, she launched parentingplans.org, a comprehensive educational platform guiding parents in creating effective co-parenting plans post-divorce. Her course promotes a collaborative, peaceful approach for parents and their children. So happy for you, Tracy, and so happy that so many people get to benefit from this.
Thank you so much. That was such a lovely introduction.
You're a rock star, of course.
I only want to point out to the listeners, Karen introduced this as an exciting topic. I know you don't think this is exciting, but we'll try to make it exciting. Who wants to talk about their kids and expenses?
Yeah. It's only an exciting topic because Tracy has his new program. That was the exciting piece of it. Good point, Catherine.
Well, it's exciting if we want our clients to save money and stop fighting post-divorce. That's what's the most important thing here is there are things people can do that financially protect you in the future. And so often, parenting plan is about parenting time and decision making. And no, that's like the root of it, of course, but this is the place where you can define all the financial things that you need to like discuss and bring up. Because if you don't talk about it, you're going to fight about it. And so if you don't know what to fight for, you're going to end up with a dumb parenting plan that will land you back in court.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said if you don't talk about it, you're going to fight about it. That's profound.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
good.
think about it, right? I mean, if you don't think, like, I have at least 3 clients right now, and they're all the mothers in the family, paying for braces because it never said it in the document. And the husbands are like, doesn't say I have to pay. And it would cost so much to take him back to court to fight it. She's just like, I'll pay the $10,000. It's just not worth it, right? So if you think about forward thinking about what your kids' needs are, like, and just go, well, what are we going to do when they need a computer? What are we going to do when this happens? Just think forward so that there's no arguments. And of course, I deal with narcissistic divorces, which are always high conflict, and you're going to fight about everything. That's even when it's more important. But to the people who are in a friendly divorce, if that's a word, right? In a more congenial arrangement where, yeah, we're talking about things, we're being civil to one another, you still should think about this protection because 5 years from now, things could change. And you just don't want to set yourself up because we're like, oh, we're getting along now. But things get
Mhm.
read, other things
Mm.
happen in life. And just to know that this is protected and I have that safety and security knowing we've thought it through, especially if we were doing it together.
Even if you're not doing it together, I like that your program will outline what you should bring up to your attorney to make sure it's included in your agreement because they're not going to bring it up to you.
No, attorneys make very expensive teachers. Like if you were to ask your attorney, well, what should I put in there? $500 an hour adds up really quick. And in an hour and a half, you have very little information because there's so many details to include. And I would think that more lawyers would understand the value of putting in things to protect the people. But this is the problem with parenting plans is it's always the last thing that kind of comes into the ring, right? It's get through the financial stuff. That's what you guys are doing, the fight, the house, the this, but the by the time they get to the parenting plan, they're like, oh God, we're all out of money. Let's just get the basic and we'll figure it out later. That goes into the pay now or pay later, where these are the decisions that are more costly because, like those braces examples, you're going to have to keep paying and paying if it didn't say it was included.
Or they
Yeah.
use the financial part, the division of assets and debts and support as a something to hold over you for the parenting plan.
Hmm.
It shouldn't work that way. We talk about premature negotiations. I think you should do your parenting plan first,
Yeah.
um, and put your energy there. And with us, our process is set up that yes, we could still work on the financial piece, so you feel like you're moving forward in that direction, but as we're doing what we have to do behind the scenes, you can be working on your parenting plan.
Absolutely. And that's
Well,
that's what I
yeah.
want people to be doing. It shouldn't wait till the end. There's too much to think about. And while we could have divorce brain and fog,
Mhm.
it's still something that you could sit down with a course like this with your sister, with your best friend, with somebody, a family member, and just be like, let's look at what I need and have a buddy to help you go, oh my God, that's what he's not doing. Let's protect you on that. Or she never does that. So let's make sure there's protection because we don't want that in the future. And that's where it makes a difference.
That is so true. And, we have a whole handful of clients who have gone through the parenting plan and then
Mhm.
they start to work with us. And the sharing of expenses has not even been put on the table. It it was, we have the parenting plan, we have the visitation schedule, whatever it is, and they
Mhm.
think that's the end of the parenting plan. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation today.
Mhm.
So let's just dig right in. So let's start with, how does someone financially protect themselves in a parenting plan?
Well, I think it's shifting the concept and making it about the parenting plan earlier, right? Some of the things that we need to understand are what we should include, what we shouldn't include, and you know, if we don't put this stuff in, you're going back to court. That's the bottom line. It's if you don't think about it, you're going to go back. And so, basic things like we all know that child support will be established. It's just a financial number, but putting in a line that would say something about what it covers and what it doesn't, because every state's different. So, housing expense, a little bit of rent, a little bit of car, a little bit of food, a little bit of clothing, the basics are what's there. But if you don't define it, then you're going to end up arguing over it, as I said. So, defining child support covers this, but does not cover activities, camps, medical extra charges, all of these things so that this is what we have to decide on. So most of it is just assumed, and this is where the support paying parent will be like, I'm paying you support, take it out of there. Camp, take it out of
Mhm.
support." And that takes away from their food and other supplies budget, but it's not included. So it should be defined that we have to, you know, fight for those things.
Yeah. So, first step is understanding how the parenting plan should include the financials
Oh yeah,
and knowing what child support covers and what it doesn't. So, to
absolutely.
your point, every state is different, but I think for the most part, they align with the shared expenses. So, let's talk about that. What kind of financial things are typically a shared expense when considering?
Well, I think we start at the top, right? Because we've got the tippy top of the most expensive things like cars, computers, phones, right? And then the bottom of the level is who's going to pay for the teacher gift or the classroom supplies that come up every year, right? So you have to understand this is the bigger tickets. We start with that stuff, which is, decisions about phones. Whose plan is it going to be on? Who will pay for it? Having even on the phone line, you could have something along the line as which parent has the rights to the password for the kid's phone. Just all of those little things that end up being a problem, but financially, who's going to pay for it? And I tell people when they got a computer, a phone, anything like that for a child, that you should really insist that we get insurance, because I've had 1,000 people whose kids drop the phone and the ex says, well, you know what? I just bought one. It doesn't say I have to buy two. Well, if you had insurance and the kids are going to break things, right? Just agree that we'll get insurance so that if another phone has to come, it's automatic. We don't have to fight over it. This is the big things we have to look at absolutely first, right? But then the other big things are professional costs, right? Let's say we have to talk to a mediator. Let's say we have to go to a parental coordinator or someone else. Those bills can add up quickly. So you make arrangements for those kind of things. And outlining this is how you know it's covered. If you don't think about what we're going to do about therapy, that goes into the professional costs. If the kids are going into therapy, you don't want to fight about where's my half and how come I didn't get money, right? And life insurance is another huge one, because I see a lot of people that do get it, but most of them don't. If you are entitled to alimony or support for the children, it's really advised to get life insurance, and make sure that the other parent who is taking out the policy gives you a copy of it every year so you know it's current and you know how to get in touch. I've had someone where they had life insurance, but they didn't have the plan. So the person died and it took like 6 months to figure out, well, who's the carrier? And well, now they haven't been paying for 6 months. And what do we do now? Right? It has to be something that is easily accessible in case of a catastrophe. You have to know those things and you just put it in there. Every year, I want to know it's current. Every year, I know I'm protected. And this is usually the length of the support payments, right? And so those kind of things are huge financial junks, right? We have to remember them.
That's so true. I've been in a couple cases just recently where number one, the children are, let's just say, between 3 and 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, right? They haven't even thought about what those
Mm.
teenage high school years are going to bring. Are they going to have sports, theater, whatever it may be? So that is something that you should forward look to. But then even those parents in the space of, to your point, camps or sports, we see so much of this very expanded, expensive, like whether it's dance or whether it's international
Oh, yeah.
hockey, baseball, and in these higher net worth estates, that they've been paying for it. But when a spouse is living on whatever alimony or child support is provided, then they have to think about a cap to whatever they can afford for these. If they're spending 30, 40, $50,000 a year for their kids' sports activities or theater activities, you do have to think further. To your point, you have to project it all the way out so that all of those things are being considered. And sometimes
Mhm.
it's not 50-50, sometimes it's pro rata. And so like we experience a lot of that as well.
Yeah, and I've had a father in this case agree he would pay the children's expenses, and there was a budget. It was like $10,000 a kid per year, and
Hmm.
so the mother. This is during the process of divorce. The mother would go out. She actually bought the kids a $10,000 e-bike. And the kids weren't even legally allowed to drive it, but she became the hero and she handed dad the bill. Right.
My
And so
goodness.
what we did with that was, okay, lesson learned. We have a budget. Anything above $100, you better approve, or you're making a unilateral decision. And I'm not paying for that e-bike, not letting you be the hero, buying them a computer. I get the bill, but I don't get the cred that I actually paid for it. Right. It's not the cred. It's the lawlessness in taking and just buying and buying. And and making the other parent responsible for it. Those are the traps that people get caught in when they try to be nice and go, I'll take care of the kids' expenses. And that's where they get into trouble. So setting that limit is priceless because it just means I'm going to approve. Hey, we got a camp coming up and it's $2,100 for the summer, making sure it's okay. And then you get the approval and you don't get the fights.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that you guys brought up that I want to touch on. And the first one, and I hope I don't forget the second one. The first one is, you know, being the hero. I could promise you this, somebody who's been divorced with 5 kids in that process. Yes, my ex-spouse made the money and he continued to make the money and he continued to spend more than on the kids than I could. But I didn't feel like after time I wasn't the hero because they all see the truth over time, what you're providing. So I was like, great, let them do it because they're benefiting from it. So you
Mhm.
have to kind of shift your mindset sometimes there. And if it benefits your kids, let the other spouse look like the hero. It's hurtful now, but over time they're going to see the truth anyway.
Right.
But I want to caution my other point. I want to caution the people who are listening who are saying, "Oh, you know what? That's not my spouse and I. We both agree we love our kids and we're going to give our kids the best of everything and whoever can afford it is going to pay it." That's great if that works out, but you want it, as Tracy is saying, and she lays out in her program, you want to make sure that you have an agreement to fall back on in
Mhm.
case the love story between the two of you changes moving on. So if
Mhm.
you have, you don't have to follow what's in your agreement if you don't want to. If you want to keep sharing, you want to pay more, go ahead. But you want to agree a good agreement to fall back on in case things change. So make
Mhm.
sure you cover everything that's brought up in Tracy's program to include in your agreement.
Yeah, and the hero buying, which is, buying their love and they can afford it. So again, it's good for your kids. It's not good if you become accountable for that, like the e-bike. Like that's what you want to protect yourself of. Go ahead, buy them the world, take them to, Kenya. I don't care. But at the same time, if they were taking them to Kenya and handing you the bill, that's the risk that you have. And so if you agree on expenses and you just lay it out as to this is our budget. And again, beyond that, we can certainly spend things, but let's approve it together. And that way we are sort of on the same page, right? And when we get into that, expense reimbursement is often like an overlooked part. How are we going to get the money back? Whether it's a parenting app, it's Zelle, it's PayPal, it's a check, it's this. How long is it going to be before we get the money back? And what if they don't give us the money that they owe us? What's your legal action? Because I've seen it in parenting plans 4 times in one parenting plan going, well, if they don't pay, don't worry, you'll go back to court. Don't worry.
Oh,
And I'm like, you really wrote that, lawyer? Like they paid you a lot of money to write something that's going to put them back into the lawyer's pocket. And the idea is to have everything so you never have to go back to court. It's been thought of and prepared for. And that's how you end up in a much better relationship. And the children have less friction and conflict. Because if you're always fighting with the other parent about little expenses and things, and we can't have that because mommy won't pay or daddy won't pay, that the house has so much conflict and it becomes more traumatic for the children. So if you want to create a peaceful life for your kids, you think about this stuff and be responsible as much as you can to think forward, like Karen said, and make sure that you've thought it through.
yeah. And so in your program, I'm sure, there's all the things to think through. And to Catherine's point, a lot of people want to believe, and probably maybe for some it works, or they want to believe that it's always going to be status quo. But
Mhm.
life changes all the time. And
Mhm.
in that place of preparation, the what ifs place, of course you hope that things stay the way they are, your intents stay the way they are. But if not, then no one's going to have trouble documenting and committing to an agreement otherwise, right? So
Mhm.
there's not a problem then when let's just document it in what we call the honeymoon phase when you're working things out. Then,
Mhm.
to your point, Tracy, you never have to go back to court again.
Right. I
It's
mean,
a
isn't
win-win.
that the goal? You've spent so much on this, right? While you have lawyers, while you have mediators, while you can think this stuff through, get it done. Why keep going? I've had people back to court every month. I've had them have to change their parenting plan 15 times because it was like, oh, yeah, we didn't know about that was going to come up. Oops, let's go back to court, $10,000, right? It's very expensive if you don't think it through because you'll see the holes of what they're doing and go, gosh, there was something that could have protected me from that. Oh my God, I didn't know. Right.
Yeah, so true.
Hmm.
So in your book, you have something called the what if they don't clause. And I
Mm.
think you've touched on it a little bit already.
Yeah.
So that is something that should be added to the parenting plan. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. It's a non-compliance clause, meaning that if they don't comply with anything in the parenting plan or the divorce decree, then it says that they will pay your legal fees. It actually says either party who does not comply with whatever was ordered, so it's not against one or the other. If you don't do what you say, and I've got to take you back, then you're going to have to pay the legal fees. That stops going back to court 1,000 times a day. If we had that, we'd be like, I'm not paying your legal fees. Let's work it out. Let's go to mediation and we'll split the costs because we have that in there, right?
Mhm.
It prevents that sort of extra expense of all the money of having to take them back because they're not going to want to take and pay your legal fees, right? So it's a huge deterrent and it works both ways. If you're not complying, you would end up having to pay their legal fees as well.
Yeah.
That's how it gets in there. It's for both parties, so it's not targeting one parent.
I'm going to add something there, Tracy, because we see this a lot too. Their attorney will say, "Oh, we have that in the agreement, or it is in the order." But
Mm.
what they don't let their client know is what's in the order is if that you take them back to court and there's an order that a contempt order issued, then the legal fees come into play. But Tracy, what you're saying is no, you don't have to wait for a contempt order because typically people comply out of negotiation before that actual order is necessary. So what you're saying is if I have to take you back and you haven't been complying with the agreement, you will pay my legal fees. It's a
Okay.
different clause.
So I'm going to hop in here because I'm really glad you brought that up, Karen, because that honestly, when I'm listening to you, Tracy, I'm thinking, well, most of the agreements I read have that clause in there. So if you're listening, listen, I do divorce all day, every day with hundreds of people, and I'm just a financial person. So I didn't take it to be that I needed to have a contempt charge to get the legal fees paid. So
Mhm.
I'm really glad that you two are bringing that up, just because I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who think like I think, and would have never pointed that out.
Right, and even though they're in contempt, and this is what the lawyers kind of mix up here. My husband was in contempt 7 times, right? Nothing ever happened. So are we going to hope that they go, oh yeah, this is contempt, or let not make it a contempt thing this time, but sir, go ahead and pay, right? Again, it becomes you're back in court fighting with a judge whether it's contempt or not. This is you didn't send the money,
Mhm.
period. This is what happens if you don't pay, right? That's all there needs. We don't need to go, let's go into the contempt of court and fight that battle. Like, what? How much more money does the court want from people? It's ruining families. It's ruining their financial future to fight and go back to court over and over. And this doesn't have to be that way.
Right. And to your point, Tracy, I would believe that anybody who's in this process or exercise of creating a parenting plan and they're working with the attorneys, they do have these questions. And the attorneys always say, well, if they don't,
Go
you'll
back to
take them
court.
back to court. People don't
Always.
realize that that's really not a viable option for you. It,
It's an expensive one. You're paying the lawyer. He's guaranteeing the next paycheck, right?
yeah,
Well,
Especially.
and most of the cases don't even ever get to court when they're going through divorce. They all settle. So what
Mhm.
do you mean we'll go back to court? You're making me settle before we even get to court. So how am I going to get to court next time? You're going to
yeah.
settle again.
Yeah.
Right.
And you still are going to pay that 10, 12, 15, $20,000 per incident, right?
Absolutely.
So,
And you're also
yeah.
not getting back the money that you spent to send your kid to Europe because the whole class was going or something. That was
Yeah.
$5,000. And now we're fighting it and we approved it. We did all the things we are supposed to do, and you're still not paying. That's $5,000 out of your pocket in the first place much less to go and have legal fees on top of it. Do you see how expensive this can
Yeah.
get?
Yeah. And the trauma to the family, to your point as well, right? The
Oh.
trauma to the kids because they do get stuck in the middle of it all.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
yeah, planning for it is great. You've done really great work by putting this together.
It took
So
3 years.
I'm sure many people are going to thank you. So, what other types of mistakes do you see when people are making their parenting plans?
Well, I think, if we look at their behaviors, this is everyone's going to have different behaviors that they've seen, whether it's in the marriage or in the divorce process, right? Let's say they withhold money and don't reimburse you. They make you beg for it, right? So then we add in an expense reimbursement policy. And to me, this is a brilliant thing. It's this is how we're going to get paid. This is how, how much, when, why, and then we move on from there. But you also define the portion. So if one parent is 40, 60, then it's all defined. So there's no arguments, right? If they are refusing to agree to anything that your child needs. I have a lot of parents that are fighting over the kids need therapy. My kid's fine, doesn't need therapy. The kids need braces. My kids don't need braces, right? So if they're arguing things like that, we fight for final decision making using all of the examples of them not being cooperative, going, look, the kid needs braces. I've had to send 85 emails. My lawyer sent 14 letters. We're trying to get this approved. And then you go, this is why I need final decision making for medical, because this part isn't working for our family, right? And then getting into the conflict resolution policy comes in, and it's a brilliant thing. It comes in, it goes, this is how we're going to do it. We're not paying attention to the lawyers that say go back to court. We're going, first stop, we'll try to agree. Huh, okay. Second stop, we go to mediation, or we go to a parent coordinator. Third stop, we go to the court, right? We have a schedule, and we also need to define who the parent coordinator is or who the mediator is. Because if you're in the middle of a fight, you don't want to fight over who the mediator is. I'm sure you guys have the same thing with realtors. I have many clients that, like, they have to sell the house, but the other spouse will not agree on a realtor. This is the situation. If you're in that kind of like nasty fight of everything, you don't want to fight over something when you're trying to agree on something. So name them, put it in there. Your lawyer knows these people. Both lawyers make it say, hey, this person or this person, and you will agree, and it goes in there. Stops another fight. Anything you can do to stop another fight is crucial, right?
I
And
love
having
that.
somebody to remind you of the things that might come up is really important because it's so emotional going through the divorce process. And we deal with it on the financial end and we provide all the knowledge,
Mhm.
but the parenting, it's even more emotional because for most, particularly the stay-at-home spouse is the one that's most attached to that domain, I want to say. So to
Mhm.
have, you can't really clearly think of what could happen, you're only in that moment. So to have your program and to be able to bounce things off of is so important because you can't go back and redo these things.
I mean, you can. It's going to cost you 20 grand.
You're right. That's
And
true.
all the
Yes.
fights with
Yeah.
they're not going to agree. So do it now while you've got the team, and invest in your children's future. I said to a client the other day, I mean, all right, how much did you spend for your wedding dress?
Mm.
And I was like, I spent like 4 grand on both of my different wedding dresses, and they're, in Goodwill's, bin. I'm like, if you wore that for one day, this is the next 18 years of your children's life. This is a lot less than a wedding dress, but it is still an investment to know what you have the right to ask for and to fight for, right? And even thinking about something that, again, often gets like sort of missed. It's we will review the parenting plan every year, say January 1st,
Mm.
and go, our kids are 12 now. What happened at 7? It doesn't apply. Let's adjust this. Let's move this. Let's agree. And if we aren't agreeing, we have a plan to go back and get to the parent coordinator or the mediator to say things have changed in our kid's life. And instead of it being so hard down, like week on, week off might work really well when they're this age. But when they start to be, on to soccer teams in high school and have all these things, it might be better in a different way. So just be open to being there for the children and their needs as they grow too. If you don't have something like that in there, you're going to be like, well, I think our kids, the parenting plan isn't working so well anymore. You're going to have a fight. You're just going to sit
Mhm.
there and nothing's going to happen. But if you have that little tiny sentence that says, we'll evaluate it together and make a decision. And if we need to make changes and we can't agree, we go to our conflict policy, right? It just makes
Yeah.
sense for people to protect themselves this way.
And I just want to throw in something relative to healthcare because every state is different. But we were working with a family in Pennsylvania several years ago where mental health care came into play, and
Mm.
the support order had said that the parents would split the medical care costs, right? The out of pocket reimbursements. But because mental health care wasn't specifically included, it was excluded.
Mhm.
So you need to know what is included and excluded in these various discussions because you can't just say medical. You can't just say activities. You can't just say travel. You can't just say camp. And I'm sure your program covers all of this
Mhm.
to the extent that, be empowered enough to get all the way to the bottom so that you're really clear because it's important. And I'm just so thrilled to hear that you've created this for so many families.
It's a powerful thing, right? And part of it besides, so I have 52 lessons. You will not need all of them. If you don't have a special needs kid, you're not in the military, these things are factors that you won't even have to look at them for. But when you're looking at them, there's a video for each one and there's a worksheet. And I'm not talking one page. Some of them are 14 pages long. And again, it's big boxes. I wanted it to be easy to read. I could have put it in a 2-page Word doc and you'd be like, too much, too much. So it's pretty little boxes like we were in kindergarten. They are easy to digest and understand. And then you say, hey, I didn't know I could ask for this lawyer. Can I get this? But I also did the work to find state parenting guidelines. So except for Rhode Island, I have all the state's guidelines. And where this comes is to know what your rights are. And just I've had so many clients, I'm like, did your lawyer ever tell you there's this document in your state? And they're like, no. I had a woman whose husband was in jail for beating her in front of the children. And he got out and they were in the divorce and fighting, and he wanted 50% custody. And her lawyer never said, oh, well, no problem here. We went and looked at that state parenting plan, and it said if someone had been incarcerated, if a domestic violence had been involved, there was a 90% likelihood they would have to have supervised visits for a period of time. Her lawyer never told her that. When she looked at that, she's like, I have hope now, right? To
Mm.
know what your rights are, to know what a good parenting plan time breakdown is for an infant and a step up plan that works for the child, not just take them for a week, even though they're breastfeeding, right? Know these are your options, know what to fight
Mm.
for. And just to see these things, I also, because I studied parenting plans and I studied clauses, and I'm like, wow, that's good coverage. I made each lesson, not every lesson, I'd say about half of them have a sheet of clauses. Bad
Mm.
clause, legal custody, bad clause. I write bad clause. Here's what a good one would look like. We're defining what the legal custody covers, right? And here's what it means to ask for this bad clause, good clause, so that you can not necessarily use them. They are legal, but you can look at them and go, I don't want one that just this limits me. This is what I need, and this is the protection. So if you're a geek and want to look at that stuff or have your lawyer write it, you could sit there and understand it because you've seen it. Like most people are like, what does it even look like? What am I supposed to ask for? Right. Now I've given you that so you know what to ask for and you see it. And all the primary lessons are, 12 pages of clauses, 3 pages of clauses, so you can get a feel for what you want and what you don't want. You want to add and make sure there's a time on this. Here's one that would have a time on that. Here's one that has a budget on that. And this one doesn't. You know what to ask for when you see what you can ask for.
Well, you know how I love your book and I have post-it notes all over your book. I'm surprised you didn't send me this because I mean, I don't have children now that I have to worry about. But I'm loving how this sounds because I love a step-by-step guide, right? And is there an interactive piece to actually go through with your spouse on how many overnights would be good so they can sample it together? Do you have that in there as well?
Yeah, again, it's outlining all of the choices, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
I even have, like, Arizona has the best guideline. It's 350 pages, and they
Mm,
outline every single age group, different variables, and it's just really helpful to go, "Oh, why didn't Rhode Island do this?" But it's still really helpful to see it on paper to know your rights. But again, we can have fog brain, I know that, but at the same time, this is what you've gotta fight for, right?
yeah,
Or
it's
not fight
important.
for. You see the other side too. I like
Absolutely.
that you have the full guidelines there, because if your head is stuck somewhere that you're not going to get any forward movement with, it'll point it out, and then you pick a different fight.
Absolutely, and again, they could do it together and sit there and go, "Hey, on this worksheet, I think this. Well, why do you think that? Okay, well, that makes sense. Okay, let's do that." Right? If you're in that friendly place, you can do it together and just protect your children. It doesn't cost that much more to have your lawyer write the clauses when you tell them what to do, and you just go, "Here's what I want." Everything's cookie cutter. They just paste. And so it really becomes something that, again, if you don't know what to ask for, you're not going to get what you want.
I love that. Prepare, 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 right? All day long.
Right.
Tracy,
And
how do people find your master course?
it is on parentingplans.org. And I have so many blogs and educational pieces because that's what I did on my NARC site. It's educate, educate, educate. And then, if you want to get into buying the course, it's there for you. But there's so much education on what does this mean and what should you fight for here? And what do you do with a special needs child? And what do you do with this? There's so much to consider. So it's all there on parentingplans.org.
That's great. We'll have all of this in the show notes as well. And if they go to your website, I guess there's a link to that as well.
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Social media and so forth. All
Yep.
right. Well, Tracy, great conversation on financial issues to tackle when building out parenting plans. Thank you so much for a great conversation.
Thank you for having me, ladies.
Great seeing you, Tracy.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of We Chat Divorce. We hope this episode was informative and supportive on your divorce journey. If you're looking for more support for navigating divorce with confidence and clarity, head over to mydivorcesolution.com for more podcast episodes, divorce events, and resources for your divorce. We'll see you back here for our next episode.